All right. Well, Tina, it's very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on the film. I saw it about a month ago and I absolutely loved it.
Oh, thank you so much.
So you adapted the transcript into a play in 2019. Now the film came out on HBO Max last year, and I'm wondering just to start, what made you want to take this story to the screen?
Yeah, I mean, I stumbled upon the transcript in December of 2017, like just in like a free reading of news kind of situation, not researching Reality Winner. At that point, I really, like many people I've now talked to, really hadn't even taken in her case. At that point, she'd been in the news. The little bit she was in the news for about 6 months, right? Because June 3rd, 2017, which is the movie, um, that's when she first comes in. But that whole summer, I think if someone asked me what did Reality Winner do, I couldn't have even told them. I very vaguely had a sense that a young blonde woman had been arrested for something. Anyways, I was reading a longer article about her in December 2017, just free reading, and it had more pictures of her. So I was really like, wow, this young woman was quite young, and her life is really interesting. Like there was like details in this feature on her. And then that had a link to this transcript. And I'm still just like free reading, and suddenly this, photocopied PDF comes up. It took you off the site to Politico where that transcript was. And it was this document. The transcript just was like so fascinating to me, like the level of language. And also for me, I'm scrolling through it. Like I know by then that she's in prison, of course, but I'm like reading it like, when do they get her? Like, how does this happen? It felt like this really thrilling and unexpected and story that was unfolding in real life with the real language. And she just was, to me, such a compelling person in her voice as I read, kind of envisioning watching her moving through it. And I just felt like there was something in it. I'm like, this is like my kind of protagonist. And the fact that we have this actual document and can be in that room is kind of irresistible to me as someone who makes things and really thought of it as both a play and a movie. I was like, there's something about this that could be both of these things. I had made a lot more plays at that point, and it was easier to get a play going faster. So I immediately started trying to work on that. But I had the movie idea in my brain, and that was able to come to fruition a few years after.
And was the process of structuring how the film was paced different from the play?
Really, really different. The play ran about an hour. And, there's actually a few cuts to the transcript for the movie just because it would have been so long. Like nothing, I mean, I worked really hard on this, nothing that would change story or change even tone. Like some of those scenes were just really long. Like the scene on the front lawn where they talked to her about CrossFit, that was like 5 or 6 or 7 pages. I mean, it was just like almost double what it was in the movie. So I kept everything in order. But the stage play, just for a sense of pacing, because it's kind of just wild, was every single thing from the transcript, and they would do that show at about an hour because we do it really fast, and it wasn't realistic staging necessarily. Um, and it was, you were literally watching sort of in front of your eyes, live human, and this incredible actress Emily Davis kind of fall apart and then fight through that role. And then of course it was really different filmically, like really trying to keep pace and tension and realism, really kind of true realism, then film realism, but to what pace of dialogue would be, or what those kind of scenes could have felt like. That was, you know, more work in the sense of like every single scene was going to have this really specific flavor to it, pace wise. And so just really working that out, yeah, with the actors and all that.
And was Sydney Sweeney your first choice to play reality for the movie?
You know, I didn't really have a first choice. It was like there were like we felt like once we had the finished script and producers and talking to people, it's like, oh, it's a good role, right? Like it's a kind of juicy role for an actress. And there were, you know, people who were interested that were all really exciting. And Sydney's name came into it a little later in the process, actually, and then became immediately very exciting. Like, oh, wow, Sydney Sweeney. And, you know, such an unexpected choice, in truly to my brain at first. Like, I knew she was excellent, but I was like, is this reality? And she actually read for the role, which was like really exciting. But before she read, and before I even knew if she had time to read, she and I just had a Zoom, sort of just like, hey, she had read the script and was interested, even if it wasn't going to work out to do it, that we could talk, just, you know, filmmaker to actor. And she was that it wasn't a call, but that Zoom was really like just cool. I mean, I went through most of the Zoom not even knowing that she would end up being able to read and do the movie, but like she had such smart thought. She had thoughtfully read the script. She had not known who reality was at all, so had come to it in a way that was like really interesting to me. Like, Sydney's so much younger than me. She's closer to reality's age. She was the age reality had done this act at. They're both these kind of very kind of unique young women in very different spheres of the world. But like they both had a kind of a, you know, sort of specific American girlhood and coming of age that I think kind of had some resonances as we were speaking. And so once I talked to her, I was like, oh God, it'd be really cool if she could do this. And then she read and was great. And then once she was on set, it was just like, oh my gosh, that thing, like, how could it have ever been anyone but Sydney? And a really special performance she is bringing to this.
Absolutely, she's incredible in the movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's got chops.
So the dialogue, as you said, is directly lifted from the transcript, but there are parts of that transcript that are redacted. And so I'm wondering if you can discuss this particular effect that was created for the movie when it
Yeah.
comes to representing these redacted parts.
Yeah, the redactions were always so interesting to me because when you read a transcript, it's so wild. Like, you're reading it and then there's literally the black bar. It's like, oh, why can't I see what's there? And you're like, I remember just feeling this unseen hand of power is controlling this thing I'm reading. So that felt really exciting to play with filmically, but was hard just to figure out in a way. Like, in what I remember thinking, we'll have a range of options, and we did. And it was a big kind of experiment in the edit. You know what I mean? We didn't shoot like with any, not, we knew something, I wanted something to happen in those moments, but I didn't know what it would be yet. So it was all sort of this art project within the edit is how I came to think of it. And the excellent editor, Jennifer Vecchiarello, you know, we were experimenting with, you know, I had range of ideas of color being dropped over, or even images that were really explicitly related to what would be redacted, because in almost all the cases we now would know what was being referred to there. But it was somehow we came to this idea, like, what if the way the words are redacted, she is redacted? I mean, starting with Sydney, and then of course we redact the agent Garrick a couple times when he speaks. But it was like sort of that dumb, simple idea of just, and the first time, you know, we ended up doing that, of course, with, you know, pretty sophisticated VFX stuff, but the Jen, the editor, mocked up like a kind of rough version that we were looking at in the edit. And it was the first time it happened, it was like, oh, your stomach dropped, which is what I wanted. Like that, oh my God, where did she go? And then the like little secret Easter eggy part of it is those like glitches around it are like images that would be relevant to what was being said, like either news stories about the Russian article that article she shared about the Russian interference. And then they've been like decomposed video wise by our production designer, who just happened to, he does that kind of thing as like a true art project. So we had been playing with those before we came to the disappearance. And so then they became a cool way to, like, I mean, no one will, there's nothing you can see, but they are all weirdly, all those little color bursts that are up for like a millisecond are weirdly relevant to like what is being redacted. But at that point, it's just aesthetics, but that was like gave us that sort of like digitally she was getting this information online and it was being controlled by people who could see things online, etc. So
And can you also talk about working with actors Josh Hamilton and Marshawn Davis on their roles as the FBI agents in the movie?
yeah, they were both really exciting casting for me. With Marchand, the play was called Is This a Room? And Is This a Room had started out like downtown New York, then went off Broadway and then went to Broadway. And I had that role, the Agent Taylor role had to be recast for Broadway. So that's where I actually first met Marchand. He auditioned for the Broadway role and was great. We offered to him, and then it didn't work with his schedule to do the Broadway run of the play. But he was like, as soon as like I had the opportunity of the movie and we were at the casting point, and the casting director knew Marchand's work too, we were like, I went to the producer, I'm like, there's this great guy who I've literally been in a room seen reading it. I think he'd be awesome if he's now available. So that was kind of cool. Like, cut to that, 2 years later, and he is doing the part, but on screen. And then Josh Hamilton, Josh Hamilton is an incredible actor. I think he is like, like a real kind of secret sauce to so many things he's in, and definitely this, because it really is this amazing tete-a-tete between Sydney and Josh, or Reality and Agent Garrick. And he what was exciting about Josh, he's like, his roots are in stage in New York, so that level of language is really interesting to him. And that, I think, for Garrick in particular, and Josh is really almost being, all the coughs are from the transcript into the screenplay, all the stutters are from, so, and he's really honoring like 90% of that. It's almost like a word perfect delivery he's doing in the movie. And that kind of athletics of that was really fun for him. And I, give it a kind of integrity. It also is a great thing of where that Agent Garrick, those two dudes knew what, they didn't know exactly how that conversation was going to go, but they are in control. They know everything they're asking her, and they're playing this really specific language game with her. So his knowledge of and playing with that actual dialogue like that, I think was really really fun for me and for him, and just like, like an extra little texture. And the other thing I just love about Josh is, this is a dark and traumatic movie, but it's so surreal, and at times like it's kind of funny in weird unexpected ways. And that's where I think his little, like, he's got this great little like secret humor thing where you're like, he's really helping underline just really delicately the ridiculousness at times of those men, or what they're putting her through. So that's, yeah, both of those guys were great, and just such a pleasure to have. It was a really cool trio in our very fast and busted out shoot. They were excellent.
So, I hadn't heard about Reality Winner before I had watched the movie, and, I was just sort of discovering the story for the first time, and the tension was really mounting from the beginning to the end. And I'm wondering, like, how did you want to sort of represent this mounting sense of tension, especially from the aesthetic to the sound design for the movie?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like the sort of like the internal factor that then I would like talk about with the DP and production design, and then of course in the edit and with the composer, was like my imagining of what this feels like for Reality or anyone to move through this, right? Like where she's, knows she's done something wrong, but is like going to try to feel out what the situation is. Then at times maybe thinks, all right, maybe we're just going to talk on the lawn about dogs for a little bit, and then they'll go away and this will happen later. But like trying to really track, that foreboding build as she's trying to stay a step ahead of them, right? And I think there's the clear thing that once they get her in the house, there's like that, like a little bit of a hammer drop, like, oh, like, so just really, riding out. And then I had divided it in that tension sense into the 3 acts of like the lawn, the house, and then after she admits, which has its own weird tension, almost the hardest one to manage in a way, because she has admitted. So that like, are they going to get her? Question is solved, but what is going to happen now is there. So yeah, aesthetically, I think that was really driven by being like at first outside under the sky, the grass. It's like this weirdly, like it's just a Saturday afternoon in Georgia. And then all of a sudden she's in this room, and the room she doesn't want to be in. And that room really, like, I'm, proud of it. And I love the production designer, Tommy Levitt. That was what her room looked. That room was like that. And, there was all these discussions. Can it really be that stark? And how are we going to shoot for that long in just a white room and keep it interesting? And again, credit, of course, to Paul, Paul Yee, the DP. But so, just I think that room alone adds such weird tension to that section of it. So really trying to keep to the realism of her actual house, which are always fascinated me. The vulnerability of talking to the FBI in your own bedroom, going into this weird room. Yeah, and then the score and sound design, of course, was something for a long I was really unsure of score, like, as we led up before the edit, like, as we're prepping, I'm like, I just don't, I couldn't think about, I wanted it to be as, like, in a weird way, as dry as possible and not push. Of course, you could really layer that with, like, stuff and push some of that tension, but it was, like, more interesting to see if the actions itself and the actual dialogue could hold, and then just underscore it, or push it or frame it with this score where we needed to, which is sort of where we ended up with, tons and tons of nuancy, experimentation, and back and forth with the composer and then the editor. And sound design wanted to keep it realistic too, but then use it. And I guess that's, one of them is, it's not the super specific answer, but one of the things that was one of my main things I wanted to achieve, and one of the challenges of this movie, is that since it was real, never didn't want to do something that made people think what was actually happening didn't happen. Do you know what I mean? And so it was this really specific line, but also it is a movie, and I didn't know exactly how that action unfolded, and I am making choices. So that, anyways, that was this little nuancy area of sound design in particular, of keeping it sort of realistic and then detonating it to be a little bit psychological, especially as the movie goes, but then still keeping the thumps and bumps of that sound design things that she actually might be hearing as these 9 men search through her house.
So the film has been out for almost a year now, but it has been nominated for several awards right now. As more people probably discover the movie right now, I'm wondering, is there something that you hope audiences grasp out of this film?
Yeah, for me, it's mostly knowing who Reality Winner is. I think she's a really exceptional and special person, and she didn't ask to become this, like, public and national and now international figure, but I think she is, and she was even before the movie. But I think she's at once this really, like, singular kind of just young woman trying to live her life, and then she had a really fascinating specific kind of American background, and then she did this really, fascinating and arguably important action, because I think, again, it's a big thought, but I think if we have a democracy, I think the levers of where citizens can speak up and what whistleblowing means is super important. And I think if it's a little blip in that discussion, is important too. So I think just understanding who Reality Winner was, and what the choice she did, especially in this current moment in our history, with, like, the questions of who has access to information and why, and who gets punished or not for sharing that. I think I don't have answers for it, and the movie doesn't have answers, but I think it's a really relevant discussion to all of us, and however much one wants to engage with it.
Absolutely. It was really great talking to you today, Tina, on the
Yeah.
movie. Congratulations once again. The film is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much for covering it. It was really nice to talk to you.